we are talking about this first stage of identity, William Shakespeare. The reason why I talk with William Shakespeare is I, I gave this leadership lecture to many different cultures. This Korea, India, Europe, and the USA, and different culture. So when I try to give illustrations, I cannot just give illustration that fit to American people or Korean people and so forth. But when I spoke from the standpoint of William Shakespeare, even Russians understood. So I found William Shakespeare, the five classics, can actually say something about these life stages. So that's why I chose this one. So I chose a five, these plays. Romeo and Juliet is the issue of the 20s. Hamlet is issue of the 30s, in early 40s. Othello is the 40s or 50s, and Julius Caesar is what, 60s, and King Lear, of course, King Lear retirement. It start with the retirement time, but I think in late 70s, 80s, so last stage. So it is the five different classics actually as a good illustration of different stages, what people go through. Now, Romeo and Juliet, although you may not have read this Romeo and Juliet, this William Shakespeare's, but you're very familiar, at least familiar with the story. So if you look at the picture illustrations, and then I think these two family and Montagues and Capulet, there's a fighting, but somehow Romeo and Juliet, had an encounter, and they fell in love, and then there is I think, different process about Romeo kills about Tibia. There's some this struggle is involved, and Romeo is banished, and Julia told to marry, Paris according to these family wishes. And you go through these stages, of finally Romeo and Juliet kill themselves, and then with this killing, I think these two hostile families are restored. So I just go through this stage very, very, quickly. Point here is that Romeo and Juliet is really about early stages of life. Romeo and Juliet not mistakenly, tragic death with the impossibility to realize their romantic love. They really love each other deeply. In spite of all these hostile conditions and obstacles, but it's too much for them to bear, and so that's what happens. So when we really look at the Romeo and Juliet stories, because it's encounters, attraction, growth in love, and what are the two contexts, young people, this macro level context. These are families viewed as a macro level context. So this Romeo and Juliet shows enormous trials in the romantic love, and also beauty in love. Okay, what it means, there is a sacrifice and care, and then so whatever you think is important, there's no greater than this love, and so there's a trade ends through conflict, choice, and consequences. Of consequences, they're dead, but somehow this family, two families come together. So the reason why I mention here is that if you really look at Romeo and Juliet, it's a very beautiful this story about love and commitment and trials and so forth. But I think the Romeo and Juliet, because they did not live a life long enough, so they didn't really have the chance to consider what their identity is, what their purpose and life direction is. They really think about something in a much longer perspective of life. They didn't have a maybe chance is not the appropriate word, but at least the Romeo and Juliet, the story does not demonstrate they actually struggle for much larger life purpose, larger than their love each other. And so I think that was the point. So I think this love is very, very important in 20s and then so forth. But I think without having this people sense of identity and the purpose and direction and vision, and love itself is not necessarily this guiding the person's life. I think that's the this one this implications lesson. So I have these questions about why does Romeo and Juliet have such a universal appeal? Okay, whether it's a we all were once young, okay, and then so what would be one lesson from Romeo and Juliet that is relevant in your world? So that's my question. So, Steve, you are also a man of a very romantic love, and then you understand what that is. So, why do you think Romeo and Juliet has such universal appeal? And then even though we are not like this, the fact that we are 45 and 60, whatever, we are not Romeo and Juliet, okay? We look at, we live a lot longer, but what even so, why is Romeo and Juliet as some good relevant lesson? So, Steve, go ahead.
Interesting how written so long ago, and yet every generation has its own take.
Yeah.
There's even a modern movie on it, which is actually very different from the story.
Modern, it is the
Right, it's a modern
adaptation.
adaptation.
Go ahead.
But the themes that you picked up about youth and romantic love and hope that what I give my life for actually matters. I think when we get older, we like to reflect a little bit more on how their actions changed their world. And I think the appeal is, at least for postmodern generation, myself and younger, a lot of people are thinking about that. What really matters? What's meaning? Is there a purpose to anything that we do? So the Romeo and Juliet can appeal to both sides. It appeals to the nihilism, let us eat and drink for tomorrow we die, but it also appeals to the bigger purpose of even in the end of life, world can be changed, and the romantic idealism. So I think it has attraction, it has staying power. In the idealism of youth, we can see that romance and passion. And I remember in 2002, I had to come to Toledo and plead my case for taking Amy from Paul Hong. And he interrogated me in the church service. And it was so that's the romantic story he's talking about, is I came to Toledo to take Amy from Paul Hong. And I was bold and idealistic and young, and I really wanted to marry Amy. And so I passed all his tests, and by God's grace, I was able to marry Amy. And anyway, that's almost 20 years ago. Yeah. So thank God.
Okay, but the point is that Amy fell in love with you, and then Amy really after seeing you and then conversing with you, she says that, wow, this is the person I want to be with my life. And so there's a love. I think that this is a wonderful thing that happened. Okay, all right. Now,
thank God we didn't have to kill ourselves.
Okay, I think that. So the reason is, I think that although the things are there, but the overall sense of a purpose, of God's call, and then identity, those things are there so that this romantic love is not consuming your life. Okay, right? Okay, so Philip, have you ever engaged in romantic love? Or so what do you think of? You also live far, longer than Romeo and Juliet. So key here is that I'm not downplaying the importance of love and affection, and as a young man and woman. But the point is that this purpose and identity and the direction and vision and dream, this is as important as this. So, okay, Philip, do you have any comments on this?
Yes, thank you for asking me my opinion. So when I think about Romeo and Juliet now in my 40s, I think the passion and, the passion itself, the beauty of 20s, and then I guess we tend to lose it. Of course, it's a gradual process. It's not everything about life. But at this point of my life stage, I sometimes want to gain, that level of passion, because it's good to make person alive in some sense. So my takeaway at this point is I want to take a good aspect of Romeo and Juliet's passion
Yeah.
so that I can live a passionate life.
Okay. I think that's a good point. So the world sustains because of youthful passion, affection, and they're willing to sacrifice. So that's why in the U.S. Army, they don't really recruit people in 40s. Okay, they don't recruit. Why? 40s are not ready to die for country. Okay, right? 20s people, they are physically fit, not only fit, and then they are, if necessary, willing to die. And so that's why I think the 20s idealism, and you're willing to give your life for the things you actually value, whether it is a romantic love or love for your countries, so forth. I think that is a tremendous energy. That's the source of all, I think, things happen. So that's the point. Okay, think about this, right? Okay. Matthew John, do you have any, Peter Lee, do you have any comment? You also advise younger people, and you, once you're young, so any comments about Romeo and Juliet, about this, what is relevance to your
Oh
life?
no, sir. I never been in the romance, so I don't. I have no. I have no idea.
Okay, correct. Okay, all right then. That's good. Okay, thank you. If you want to, take a break, and you can break. Do you want to continue, or we just have a break? I really just want to keep going, okay? And then if you want a break, then go ahead, okay? All right? So do you want a break or just keep going? What do you think?
Going.
Yeah, okay, all right. So notable lessons, I said in 20s, romantic love and passion might the precious, beautiful, and important of all. Great love story include the trial and turbulence. Romance itself can be a highest value at the useful moment. There is a proper role of a larger life purpose beyond the romantic love. I think that is my just summary, okay? All right. Now, this is seemingly unrelated to this topic of leadership identity, but the Paul Tournier, he is a Swiss physician author. It was in 1920s. I'm not 1920s. The one in my 20s, after moving to United States, and then I went start this ministry in early 2020. So I came here 25, United States. But from in 20s, I came across this person's writing. And somehow I really appreciate many of his books. He actually wrote many books. He was raised in a Christian family. His parents was pastor and so forth. But one thing I liked about this person is he's not necessarily the fundamentalist sense of this a fundamentalist in a sense, this biblical in an extreme, but his understanding of God's grace and then the need for salvation and the reality of sin and those things very, very solid. But at the same time, his insight of people, the needs, is very spiritual. So that's what I like. And so Paul Tournier's worldview of philosophy, in a sense, he said, you think about universal salvation, but it's not really true. He worked with the World Council churches, but I think he was more as a psychologist in a more practical sense, whether people go to hell or heaven, but rather he really spoke about the cross and the need of salvation, redemption, reality of sin, and then it is really a powerful, this transforming power of the good news, and those things are really there. The reason why I mentioned about the strong and the weak is in at least this is my experience in my 20s and early youth. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Are actually huge issues, because a lot of young people really despair about their whatever they perceive their weaknesses, and a lot of people actually build on their strength, and their strength with the strength they have, with the social skills or communication skills these intellectual skills with the skills they actually achieve one thing after another, but the strengths turn out to be huge weaknesses as you see the failures of a lot of prominent people. So the Paul Tonier's book in the strength and weaknesses, what he really emphasized is that strength, what we call strengths and weaknesses are very subjective, but at the same time, it's very much dependent on what others or the cultures actually determine. And but those strength and weakness, that determination is not necessarily universal or is really, in a sense, absolute. Strengths and weaknesses are very relative in a sense. So in other words, what we people regard the weaknesses can be great strengths. If you look at Apostle Paul is, when I am weak, I am strong. I think the Paul Tonier's, I think this word strong and weak is, I think, based on this Paul's writing about when I am weak, when I am strong, because of the grace of God. So I think that is the emphasis. So in as young people in their 20s, I think people when they try to do certain things, they want to be athletes, they want to be go to the very good college, try to find a great jobs and so forth. And then what they found is because of perceived their weakness, they are not necessarily very excellent communication skill or people skills or some skills that are missing, and they have a real struggles about this. But what Paul Tonya is saying is those strengths and weaknesses, what the world values, has some relevance, but ultimately strength and weakness do not really matter if they are under this God's grace. So then God can use you with your strength, but God can also transform you and then really use you beautifully because of strength. So because of weaknesses. So in that sense, when I actually read this book in my early 20s, I have a very different view about my strengths and weaknesses, and no longer my weaknesses, whatever I thought my weaknesses. I do not really think that is really something I am ashamed of, something that is really need to discard it. Rather, I think really accept both strengths and weaknesses under God's grace and live our life in a very wholesome fashion. So in that sense, I think strength and weakness is very, very meaningful. If you look at Paul Conner's memorable quotes, just and let me just read just a few words. Acceptance at the heart of personality that needs to feel a sense being lovable without having to qualify that acceptance. In other words, if people love you because of our perceived strength, that's not the reason. The acceptance is, in a sense, we accept others for both their strength and weaknesses. But a lot of these things I found these were tremendously, this very helpful. Okay, okay. So adventure, the adventurous life is not one exempt from fear, but on the contrary, one that is lived in full knowledge of fears, all kinds, one in which we go forward in spite of our fears. So I think that because time is the constraint, I cannot go through all these. But I found his writing is a very, very insightful, and then really look at ourselves in a much different perspective in a meaningful fashion. Okay, all right, okay. So he said more in the final here, spiritual recounting of a life story, a mind thinking aloud leads one's inevitably to the consideration of problems which are no longer psychological but spiritual. This is the main idea. He's a psychologist, psychiatrist, but he said that people's real issues of life is not psychological. It's not even physical or psychological, but it is a deeply personal, spiritual, in need of God's grace, and God's redemption, and God's transformation. I think that's the whole point of this. So in that sense, in those in 20s, struggle with their strengths and weaknesses, relate to their identity, purpose, and direction. I think it is very, very meaningful. So a lot of people, they have something they would like to dare do something, but because of their perceived weakness, oh, I will never do that. So they easily make a conclusion. But Paul Tony is saying is that's not true. And so even winning, sooner or later, those who win are those who think they can. So depending on how you perceive yourself based on the grace of God, then all things are possible with God. I think those are the kind of lessons is what Paul Tonians they talk about. So that's why I really value this. Okay. So this another question: are you better aware of your strengths and weaknesses, and in your stage now? As people grow older, do one's strength and weakness still matter as when they were younger? So the observation is, as people get older, they do not brag about their strength too much, but they do not actually downplay or try to hide their weaknesses. So we have a lot more at peace of who we are, their strengths and weaknesses. So anyone who wants to make a comment on these questions, okay, go ahead. Mr. Peter Bach, would you like to make a comment? Are you better aware of your strengths and weaknesses? And then as you get older, how your view of a strength and weakness of yourself and strength and weakness of others? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we mentioned that you're no longer ashamed of what you thought or perceived as weaknesses. I think weakness in and of itself has both sides. Right? Could it be used as really beneficial to you, or sometimes not so much? So it's not like just divide dialectically, but how they are working together. And in different situations, your weakness could be the strength. In different situations, your strengths, you thought that could be your weaknesses too.
Okay.
So having that holistic view or combined working working together, I think that's really good view. I like that view. I really like that. Yeah.
All right. So when when people ask you, you are becoming you might become a co-director of a Great Lake region. Okay? And so when people ask you, you now as a leader, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and then how you view those things? So what would you say? What are your strengths?
You just comments, but there's something that I really have to think about.
Yeah, okay, think about that.
But one thing, my strength is could be, and I can work with many different types of people.
Oh, okay.
Very high tolerance for differences.
Oh, all right.
That's why I think my strength is I'm more unified than
Oh, okay. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm not asking this question to right person. So best the person who can say a man's strength and weaknesses is white. So about John
Now
Paul,
I'm in
you
real
say
trouble
something
now.
about,
Now
but
I'm
what
in
is
real
his
trouble.
strength or weakness? So you can just talk about strength only at this time. Ms. John Paul, would you present your wonderful husband, Peter Bach's strength that you experienced over the past many years? Okay, go ahead.
Bishop Peter, strength is he can work with any kind of paper, and he's flexible, very flexible. And he's also gentle. He does not get angry easily, and but that's also can be a weakness because sometimes he's not strict. He's not strict. So he, to me, he doesn't have any rules or not legalistic. So he's totally different from me. So sometimes we need some kind of clear line. But sometimes I see that why you are not clear about this.
Okay.
He's from Chungcheong 지방. 충청도. Chungcheong. People from Chungcheong does not say what he likes, what he wants, not clearly say. So all life together. Sometimes I feel like, what usually you are? What are you? You know. But anyway, good thing is he never gets angry. He's gentle and he's good. So he can work with any kind of people. That's also strength.
So anyway, I also noticed that Chungcheong people in Korean history, Chungcheong people is in between this West and the East. West and East, they fight. Chungcheong is in the middle. So one night, Eastern people dominate, and then this Eastern these tribes actually dominate. The next day, Western people. So therefore, when you take a position too quickly, you will be dead. So that's why Chungcheong people never take sides. So nobody knows what the person is really thinking. Okay, so that is, I think, Chungcheong people, and I think that was very well translated. That means you become very fair-minded and neutral. You don't take sides, and so you should be able. You are able to work with any even conflicting, these parties and so forth. There's a good character. So now, because of timing, so